Chasing Lincoln's Killer by James L. Swanson.
Leading up to the assassination, March 4th, Abraham Lincoln was being sworn in for another term in the office. Abraham Lincoln was at the height of his power because the North was at the verge of winning the Civil War. Lincoln gave a 701-word speech urging everyone to bind up the nation's wounds. John Wilkes Booth was at this event and was photographed on the balcony. April 3rd, the Union captured the Confederate capital of Richmond, Virginia. Emotions were high due to the fall of Richmond because the Union knew that the war was almost over. April 7th, Booth was drinking with a friend at a salon in New York City. Booth was feeling regret because he had the perfect chance to kill Lincoln during the inauguration day. April 9th, Robert E. Lee surrendered to the Union General, General Grant. Booth wandered the streets in despair. April 11th, Lincoln delivered a long speech and discussed his desire that black people, especially those who had served in the Union Army, be granted the right to vote. In the crowd was John Wilkes Booth and David Harold. Booth objected to the idea that blacks and former slaves would be becoming voting citizens. Booth threatened to kill Lincoln. He said, "Now by God, I'll put him through." April 13th. Washington celebrated the end of the war with illuminations of the city. Booth could not sleep that night. April 14th. Booth heard that Lincoln and some others, including General Ulysses Grant, would be at the Ford's Theater that evening. Booth planned to kill Lincoln there. Lincoln feared his dreams. Account of the assassination. April 14th. Booth came in with a rented horse to kill Lincoln. Booth entered the lobby finding out that there was only one servant named Charles Forbes who was near the entry of the president's box. He allowed Booth to enter the box. Booth found a bar and wedged it quietly to the door. Booth waited for a moment in the play where the audience would laugh loudly, causing enough noise to shoot his gun without people hearing. Booth kills Lincoln with a shot to the head with the Deranger. Booth gets into a scuffle with Lincoln's guest, Major Rathbone. Booth then jumps out of the president's box and lands on stage and breaks his leg. Booth escapes by horseback. Lincoln is taken to the Peterson boarding house for a death watch to begin. Lewis Powell attacks Secretary Stewart in his bed, slashing Stewart's face, making a serious wound. Stewart is injured badly but doesn't die. Powell escapes out the front door of the house. George Atzerodt was planned to kill the vice president, but breaks nerve and gets drunk instead. Secretary Stanton takes charge of the manhunt set for the assassins. Booth runs away with David Harold. The 12-day manhunt. April 14th. Booth and Harold went to the Surratt's Tavern to pick up shooting irons that Lloyd and Mary Surratt were keeping for them. April 15th. John Booth is traveling with David Harold getting out of the city, now in Maryland, looking for a doctor to check Booth's leg. They go to Maryland and find Dr. Mudd, an acquaintance Booth met while scouting escape routes, who sets Booth's broken leg. Dr. Mudd did not know about the assassination. Word spreads that Lincoln is dead, and angry mobs gather in several northern and occupied southern cities. Booth and Harold plan to cross the Potomac River. They think they will be safe when they cross it, thinking there will be sympathetic Southerners. April 16th. Booth and Harold arrive at Rich Hill, owned by a Confederate named Samuel Cox. Booth and Harold remain there for several days. Cox put them in touch with a man named Thomas Jones. Jones agreed to help them cross the river but told them to remain hidden. Jones will supply food and a newspaper for them. April 17th. Investigators get a tip that leads to the arrest of Lewis Powell, Seward's attacker. This was also the same day that the police arrested Michael Llewellyn, Edmund Spangler, Samuel Arnold, and Mary Surratt. Booth was horrified to figure out that he wasn't a hero. April 20th. A reward for $100,000 is set for Booth and Harold. Police arrest George Atzerodt. Booth and Harold go to the dense meadow and get ready to cross the Potomac River by boat. They buy a boat from Jones. April 22nd. Booth and Harold cross the Potomac River and land at Hughes Farm by mistake, going back the way they came. April 23rd. Booth and Harold found a cabin of Lucas William. Booth forced Lucas and his family to get out of the house and sleep outside, so Booth and Harold could sleep in the cabin. April 24th. Booth and Harold get to Virginia. 3 Confederate soldiers help them cross the Rappahannock River. The fugitives find shelter in a barn owned by Richard Garrett. In Maryland, the authorities arrest Samuel Mudd. April 25th. Figuring out clues, the Union troops figure out that the Booth and Harold were hiding in a tobacco farm. April 26th. Soldiers surround the Garrett barn in the early morning hours. David Harold surrenders, but John Wilkes Booth refuses to surrender, and the troops light the barn on fire. Booth ends up getting shot in the neck and dies at sunrise. This is my works cited page.